Well, hey everyone, how's it going? So in this video I'm going to be showing you how to replace a burnout incandescent bulb in the side mirror controls in my 2008 Pontiac Grand Prix. This pretty much works for all of the 04 to 08 Grand Prix regardless of trim. These burn out after about 100,000 miles. Very easy to replace. I'm going to be replacing it with a red LED. So let's go ahead and get started. In order to get this off, we need to remove the door panel. Okay, so in order to get the door panel off, the very first thing that we need to do is we need to remove the door handle trim. Now I'm going to be using a flathead screwdriver, and it's very easy to do. Just be gentle. Just kind of wedge your screwdriver in the top here. The wider the better screwdriver. Once you do that, you can pretty much use your fingers or wedge it forward a little bit. That'll snap it, okay? And then just go around the outer side and remove the rest of it. Pull your door handle towards you a little bit, and that removes this piece here. Very easy. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to remove this piece right here. This is a brushed aluminum piece. Yours might be black. That'll give us access to the two 10mm bolts that are underneath here. It's very easy to do. Basically, you just you take your flat blade screwdriver, you kind of come in at the side here, be as gentle as possible, just kind of wedge it in there. Again, be as careful as possible and just kind of bring it towards you. You can also slip something like a card or whatever in there, but basically once you get it so far, then it should start to pop out. Use your fingers and just kind of pull the rest of it out. So there it is. Again, yours might be black, and that gives us access to the two 10mm bolts to remove the door. Okay, so the two 10mm bolts are in each ends right here. Just take your 10mm socket and extension and just bring it in, and they're pretty deep in there. Just should be able to grab a hold of it pretty easily, and just do that for both sides. Okay, so once you get your two 10mm out, they may still be in there, but they're loose. They may not fall out. It's really easy to get this door panel off. So what you want to do is you want to go ahead and lock your door, and then you can grab the door panel from here. You can use something to wedge in here. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to risk scratching the paint. So what you do is you kind of grab it and bring it towards you if you can. You'll hear it kind of pop just like that, actually. And it sounds like to me all of my retainers release except for the top one. Some of these may be broke. It happens. You know, they're plastic. They're a cheap plastic, so it's always possible that some are going to break. So it looks like I've got one more up here. It needs to be released. Okay, so that's released. Just kind of go around if you can. Mine just popped real quick for some reason. So just kind of go around nice and easy. Pull that out. As soon as the door's kind of flapping around like this, what you want to do is you want to make sure you don't damage your locking knob. And you just kind of lift up on the door like this, get it around the locking knob, and then just kind of bring it down. Okay, so hopefully this will give you a better look, but there's one wire harness that's actually right here. Okay, this wire harness runs into the body and runs into your mirrors, your side mirror controls, and it's really easy to get rid of this. Take this lever here and flip it like that, okay, and then the harness itself, using two hands, just kind of wiggle it, and the harness itself will come free, and then your door panel is completely free. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the underside of the controls. This is on the inner side of the door. First thing we need to do before we get all this out is we need to disconnect the harnesses that are here. There's 4 in total. For the door locks, this bottom one here that's green, okay, so what you're going to need is you're going to need a flathead screwdriver. And you just basically push down on it, the release tab, okay, just like that. And then the next one is sort of similar. Basically, you just take your flathead screwdriver and you kind of wedge it in like this, okay, and then you can pull it out, Alright, so that's what it looks like. Now then, for the last two here, similar process. Just take your flathead screwdriver, just kind of wedge it in just a little bit, not too much, and that should release this piece here. Okay, just like that. And then lastly, same thing. Just bring your flathead screwdriver from the right here, okay, and just kind of wedge it in a little bit. This one may be a little bit more difficult because I'm using a bigger screwdriver. If you had a smaller one, it'd be easier, okay? Okay, so now all four have been disconnected. Okay, so there's a total of 4 T15 screws that actually hold this entire thing in place. Now you could in fact just disconnect it here, but it's actually a lot easier if you have this whole thing out. So it's a T15 screw, and there's 4 in total. Okay, so here's the driver control center, and I went ahead and removed the window switches and door locks, replaced those with LEDs. I have other videos on that. So we need to get the mirror controls out. Very easy to do. You can see on the side here these little tabs that hold this in place. Just take your flathead screwdriver and wedge it in between, and then you should be able to bring it downward a little bit, like so. Slide your flat blade in there like that, and that should release the switch. And go to the other side and do the exact same thing. Just kind of wedge it this way, and then the switch will pop out. Here's the switch, and what we're going to do is we're going to open this thing up, and you can see that there are tabs on both sides of the switch here, and just gently wedge the screwdriver in, and you should be able to get in between, gently in between the switch, but should be able to bring it back. You can see I released one of the tabs, and just bring the other one in just like that, and that'll release the rest of it. Okay, so there's the back. Here's the circuit board, and you can see this is actually the switch here. Okay, we're going to ignore that because we don't need to do anything with that. But this is the circuit board, and there's actually 2 incandescent lamps that are on the inside. There's one right here that lights up the 4-way directional, and then there's one up here that actually lights up which mirror you're actually going to be moving. So we have 2 that we have to replace here. Alright, so no desoldering actually necessary. I'll see if I can get as close as possible on this. So on the 2 sides here, there's actually 2 prongs that come out of this, okay? And what you can do is you can take your finger and you can actually bend those away, okay? I know it's hard to tell what I just did there, but just take your finger and just kind of bend them away, alright? Then you can use your fingers underneath here and you can actually push the incandescent bulb through, alright? So you're pushing that incandescent bulb through, and that's it. That's how you remove those. You don't actually have to desolder these things. I went ahead and did this one already. Just push it through, and that will remove the incandescent bulb. This one's actually a little bit more stubborn. Okay, so there we go. So before we go any further, this is a perfect time to clean these contacts here. And in a regular pencil eraser is actually the best way to do this. Just take the eraser and just clean up the contacts like so. You don't have to be too forceful with it, and then just get rid of any eraser that's left over, and that's how you clean them. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the LEDs and the resistors. Now, these are 5mm red wide angle LEDs, all right? They're only rated for about 3.5 volts, all right? So if you were to plug this or solder it directly to the board here, you go to plug it in your car, as soon as you do that, it's going to blow the LED. The reason is because your car puts out between 12 and 15 volts, so it'll immediately fry this LED. So to prevent that from happening, you need a way to downstep that voltage. That's why you use a resistor. This is a 620 ohm, 1 watt flame-proof resistor. All right? This is absolutely necessary in order to bring the voltage down to a safe level so it doesn't burn up the LED immediately. Now, LEDs are polarity sensitive. All right? You can see there's a long leg here and a short leg. The short leg is ground. The long leg is the positive. All right? If you were to reverse these two on the board, then you would not get anything through the LED. So these two are absolutely required. Now I'm using 1 watters just to be on the safe side, so they'll handle the output. And at the same time, I'm using flame-proof because it's such a confined space. I want to make sure that, in fact, if something does happen, these won't catch fire. So the resistor has to be on the long leg of or positive leg of the LED. So you solder the resistor to the positive of the board and then that resistor to the positive of the leg on the LED. Then you solder the ground directly to the ground on the board. So what's positive and what's negative on the board here? You got the 2 holes here where the incandescent bulbs were. The positive is the left terminal here on the left, or E. That's your positive. The right one is ground. Same for the top one here. You got positive on the left, which is F, and then K is the negative. So that's how we know that you got positive and negative. So in order to make this work, modification is going to be necessary to this piece right here. There's no way to get around it. The reason is because this thing sits flat and flush. Okay, you cannot put the resistor on this side because it will interfere with the operation of the button. There's just not enough room to do that. So the only way to make this actually work is to modify this back here. Basically what we're doing is we're modifying it so that the resistor can actually come through. So you'll be cutting a hole wherever you decide to put the resistor. You'll be cutting a hole right in that exact same spot so that the resistor can actually kind of punch its way through. It's not ideal. I completely understand that. It's not the most ideal way of doing this, but it's actually the only way that you're going to be able to do this because this is a flush mount board. Okay, so it's flush with the backing. So that's the only way you can do it. So from there, you can just kind of put this resistor anywhere you want to. You know, you can put it something like that. Put the resistor right there. And the LED is actually going to be punching through like this. So the LED is going to be flush like that on this side. And then you can put all your hardware on this side. So you don't need to worry about the LED sticking out because it's going to be sitting like that. Okay, so when you're working with solder, I don't think I need to remind you that solder guns are hot, solder irons are hot, and there's always a possibility of burning yourself, damaging whatever it is you're working on, burning down your house, whatever. So if you don't know what you're doing, find somebody who does know what they're doing because injury or damage is possible. So keep that in mind. I won't be responsible if you do injure yourself or damage something. Alright, so here's a look at the work that I've done. Both the LEDs are on the board, okay? And to achieve that, basically, I just soldered the resistor to the positive terminal on the board and kind of wrapped it around nice and tight. You want to make sure this is as low as possible because then that involves less cutting on the backside. And then just wrapped it around. The negative lead on the LED is soldered directly to the board here. Okay, now it's hard to get that focused, but and then the exact same thing with the bottom one. Okay,
So you can see that the legs are no longer, or actually no taller than the resistor. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and test these to make sure that they work. And then we'll start modifying the backside. Okay, both LEDs light up just fine. So now we can go ahead and start modifying the backside to fit the resistors. Now I know some of you are going to be wondering how to test this. I have a 12 volt power source, which is this positive and negative alligator clips that you see here. And if you're looking at the controls where you've got the harness at the bottom end, the bottom left terminal is the positive, and then the one on the far right on the bottom row is the negative, and that's how you test those. So I've completed the modifications to the backside here. It really is trial and error. All I did was I just used a Dremel with a sander bit. I've got a million of these things. And just slowly worked it around. You can use any bit that you want. The important thing is to go slow and make sure that you don't take too much of this off, because you can see how thin this is now. You also don't want to cut into the harness retainer that's right here. You want to be careful you don't hit that by accident. So this is what it looks like on the other side. And this is going to be custom to however you mounted your resistors. So yours is going to look a little bit different than mine for sure. So now we just set the board on top. You can see the important thing is to make sure that it's flush, obviously, which it is flush at all sides, okay? And because it's flush at all sides, it means that we're going to be able to close this. If you look at it from the other side, this is what it looks like. So basically, I just cut an opening. This is a little bit sloppy. You could probably do a better job. Well, I know you can do a better job of cutting this to make it more tight, but I wanted to make sure that the resistor didn't actually touch the plastic. Okay, that was my goal. So I wanted to make sure that I give it plenty of room. And if you're worried about splash coming from the door or whatever, we're actually going to be using electrical tape. We're going to put some electrical tape on both sides here to make sure that even if water were to get up towards this area, it wouldn't penetrate the seal that we're going to put over the top. We need to modify this. The reason is because these LEDs are a lot bigger than these little incandescents that were there previously. So this is really easy to do. You just basically, you see the two nubs that are right here where the incandescent bulbs went before. You can cut those off completely and then just cut around it a little bit to make room for the LED. Just cut around it until the LED actually punches through, and then you're fine. Then you should be able to finish up this job. So again, make sure you only cut these nubs that are here where the two incandescent bulbs went. And the only two here that don't have a metal contact. You don't want to cut any of these metal contacts by accident. Alright, so you can see where I've punched through the LEDs here. And so they look pretty good. Now we can go ahead and we can get the top back on. And you just very carefully just kind of pinch it together until it locks into place on both sides, like that. Verify the operation. Okay. Okay, so rather than put everything all back together and then get the door panel on to test to make sure that the switch works, we can just lift up on this part right here. So this is the only thing that retains this harness. That way we can get this harness off the door and we can just plug the harness into the car and test it before we get all the hardware all put back together. So you just basically just lift up on it like that, okay? And then that will come free, and then we can go ahead and attach this to the car and test the switch. Alrighty, so for a final test before we get the door panel back on, you can see that I have the harness off the door panel. It's actually pretty easy to do. There's just this clip that holds it right here. You just kind of pull up on it and it comes out. So I've got the driver controls right here. We're going to make sure that
Everything lights up just fine. Alrighty, so the ignition is set to on. Okay, let's go ahead and test these mirror controls. I'll start with the left. Alright, seems to be working just fine on the left. Start the right. And those seem to be working just fine. So now we go ahead and get all the hardware back on the door panel and get the door back on.
You can slide in the rest of the switches. That's how it goes in. So now we can go ahead and reattach this to the door panel. Alright, so this part is pretty simple. Just get your 4 T15 screws, and obviously you have the switches. Just push it in and just it'll kind of click into place a little bit. That's when you know it's actually latched. And then just basically get your screws back in. Again, there's 4 in total. The switches, they can only go in one way, and you can see how the harness is set up here. It's pretty straightforward. If you unplugged your speaker, you can go ahead and plug that back in, and again, they all just basically snap into place. There's no way to do this wrong. So that's it. Now we can go ahead and get the panel back on the door.
Alright, getting the door panel on is very easy to do. Just plug in the harness that's right here. What you do is you just give it a plug and then you push this lever all the way towards the front of the door or towards the car, okay? Once that is done, then what you do is being very careful not to damage the door lock knob, is you just take the door and you kind of slide it over like that, okay? You'll feel all the holes start to line up, all right? And you just go around the door, lining up the holes and then pressing them in. It's very easy to do like that. You feel everything kind of snap into place. Try not to push on the door. You don't want it to damage the hinge, even though it's not likely, but grab a hold of the door while you're pushing it in to make sure that you don't do that. And then when you feel that all of the pins or retainer tabs are in, then you're done there. So now you go ahead and get your 2 10mm bolts and get those in the door. Then you've got your door handle trim right here. It just snaps right into place like that. Pretty easy. And lastly, you have the door opener trim. Just slide it over and then push it into place. And we're done. Alright, so everything's put back together and this door is ready to go. So if you have any questions, of course, you can definitely let me know. Hopefully this video has helped you. So take care.